Welcome back to the exit plan. My name is Khatla Khomu. We are here to initiate a mindset shift so that we can all move out of our comfort zones and shift into a purpose-driven life. We continue with our topic on citizens in a kingdom versus citizens in a republic. Today we want to look at how to acquire citizenship in republics as compared to in the kingdoms. How do people get citizenship? Well, we all know that citizenship is a legal membership of a country for individuals. So for you to be a citizen, then you must be legally recognized as a member of that country or that kingdom. And all individuals that become citizens, they are expected to observe the rights of other citizens within the country. So the fact that it comes with rights and responsibilities, it also means that as we are citizens, we need to ensure that we know our rights and we also are aware of our responsibilities. Every citizen has a duty. I've explained this in the previous session. Every citizen has a duty. And as citizens of a country or a kingdom, our identity becomes intertwined with that of the country or that of the kingdom. So citizenship determines identity. In the past, in ancient times, I want to give example with the Greeks, simply because Greeks were the first civilization to actually introduce the concept of democracy. So after Greeks had introduced that, Rome took over, and when they took over Greece, they then took some of its concepts and they also practiced some of the things that Greeks were practicing. So in ancient Greek city-states and Rome, citizenship was granted by birth, obviously. I think that is something that wouldn't surprise anyone. And it was done through law, it was done through military service, and also through special decrees. And you look at the word special decree there, you realize that this actually has a kingdom perspective in it, in the sense that only a king can make a special decree. So the ancient Greeks and ancient Rome, they granted citizenship by birth through law and military service, or through king's special decree. And in the modern democracies, in the modern republics, it is still done by birth, usually. Obviously, everyone who's born in that country may actually automatically acquire citizenship depending on the laws of that country. Sometimes one country would say if your parents are not citizens of that country, then you cannot automatically become a citizen of the country. So birth is a determining factor, and then naturalization, it's one of the things that the processes that republics go through. You can become a citizen through marriage, and according to stipulations in the Constitution, or any other stipulation in the Constitution that is not referred to in what we've said, because obviously the Constitution would stipulate that for one to be a citizen has to be born in the country. So as a result, that is a way in which republics get to adopt people into citizenship. And when you look at the way kingdoms do it, the ancient kingdoms, people were primarily subjects of the king. I think we've spoken about this. The monarch had subjects, and loyalty and allegiance were central to whether a person gets to become a citizen or not. So the king would then give people citizenship based on his decrees as well. The king would choose people that he feels can be citizens. And again, the citizen status came through birth, only through those who are citizens. Remember, if you are a subject of a monarch back then, you were not necessarily a citizen. So as a result, you would need to be granted citizenship by the king for you to be a citizen. So now these are the two distinct ways in which one becomes a citizen in a kingdom. One is through birth, and the next is through royal grant, meaning that only the king can decide that anyone who's not born amongst the citizens then can be a citizen. Today we have constitutional kingdoms. We have these kingdoms which are also run as republics, and citizenship is defined by national law, well, typically by birth, because that, as I've explained earlier, a person who's born in a country and the person whose parents are citizens of that country, then they automatically become a citizen. And so if you look at what is happening now with the modern kingdoms, the processes of a republic actually are also included there. People become citizens through naturalization, they become citizens through marriage, and no one in this case can be a citizen because a king said you can be a citizen. So it's not the same as it used to be. So that is the difference in terms of what is happening in the kingdom today, in the constitutional kingdoms today, versus how they used to do it in the past. So I also want to look at this kingdom that never changed ever since. So I've learned that throughout history, the only kingdom that never changed is the kingdom of God. You see, this kingdom still operates in the same ancient way. The conditions of becoming a citizen are still the same. Only two. You become a citizen by a royal grant or by birth. So the king actually chooses you and you must be born. So those are the two things which are very critical, especially in the kingdom of God. Because I just wanna touch on this, and I know I might get a backlash on it, but it's fine. It happens. It's one of those things. Because I think someone needs to hear this. Remember, we're saying that we are shifting perspective, we are shifting mindsets. So it's important that some of these critical things be touched on so that maybe people who are supposed to see them can be able to see them. Remember, the message is always specific for some people and is not always relevant to everyone. So those who actually are supposed to hear this message, by all means, and I know that it may raise some questions within some people, it may raise some issues, which is fine. I've said this before. I would rather have questions that I cannot answer rather than have answers that I can't question. So the moment we have answers that we can't question, then we must know that there's something we're missing, there's something that we're not being told, there's something that we need to look at, because there is a fact about the issues that are truth. Anything that is truthful will never change. Anything that is truthful will never change, and truth is never afraid of being proven wrong. Truth will never silence error, because error exists when truth is silenced. So if truth is attacked, then if it's really truth, it will prove to be truth at the end, because the reality is that you cannot change the truth. The truth is eternal. Remember, what is true is different from the truth. I may be saying something that doesn't make sense, but I want you to follow me on this one. I've also learned this concept and I realized, oh, this is something that I took for granted. It is true that I'm here now talking to you about this citizenship in a kingdom and citizenship in a republic. And later on, I may be at home doing other things, or I may be at another office having a meeting. So which means those conditions keep changing. It is true that I'm here, but it is not truth, because it will change at some point. So that is the difference between true and truth. So the truth never changes. So an example of a truth would be being born as a man. You'll never change. You'll just be a man forever. Because as a male man, you can never change. Even if you want to think that you will change, it will never happen. That is the truth about you as an individual. If you're born as a woman, the truth about you is that you are a woman and it is eternal. You will be a woman from birth until death. That is how truth is. It's constant and it does not waver, it does not change. So, going back to what I wanted to refer to in line with the kingdom of God. If we seriously look at how the kingdom operates, any kingdom, I know specifically I'm talking to the never-changing kingdom, because this is a kingdom that has never changed. This kingdom operates in a way that a lot of people who believe in God, a lot of people who truly love God, a lot of people who believe that they understand what the kingdom of God is about, a lot of them don't know how the kingdom operates. And a lot of them don't understand this concept of being called and being chosen. So, and again, being born in the kingdom. This is very important, because firstly, for you to be part of the kingdom of God, you have to be invited into the kingdom. What do I mean, be invited? God himself has to bring you closer to him. These are the words that were said by Christ. Said, no one can come to me unless my Father draws him to me. So that means that for anyone to be part of the kingdom of God, they have to be first be called to come into the kingdom. And when you are called, you have to answer, of course. And you answer, you respond, you come in, you become part of the kingdom. But there is one thing which is very critical, because no one can enter or no one can experience the kingdom of God unless they are born of the Spirit. These were the words that were said by Christ. You need to be born of the water and be born of the Spirit. This didn't make sense for a long time. Didn't make sense for a long time. But at some point it started to be clear to me, of course. And a lot of God-loving people are living in error today because they believe that they are born again. Well, I'm not judging anyone, and I'm just stating my observations. And I'm just stating this so that maybe people can look at themselves, because the Bible tells us to check ourselves out, whether we are clothed in the righteousness of Christ. So I'm saying a lot of people who love God, a lot of people who are religious, they believe that they are born again. But there's just one snag there. The born again process, they actually participated in it. And I mean, this is something that may sound controversial. And well, let it be controversial. If you participated in your being born again, I can tell you probably it didn't happen. What do I mean by that? How many of us, is there any one of us on earth today who actually participated in them being born physically? No. No one actually asked to be born. No one participated. It happened to them. So that is the reason why I'm saying participating in your own birth may be participating in an erroneous process, but thinking that you are actually participating in the right process because you've heard the message, you've heard the word, you've heard the Spirit move, and you believe that you can now accept Jesus as a matter of speaking. And that is something that most of the people do, and unfortunately it's error. And a lot of people believe that because they were baptized and they were baptized and they were then taken into the church, or they were taken into the congregation and all that, and they do all the church rituals every day religiously, and they believe that they are actually born into the kingdom of God. I've come to learn with a serious disbelief, and my disbelief, I couldn't believe what I was seeing as this was unraveled. Christ says something very critical to a leader of the church or a religious leader of his time. He tells him, you cannot enter the kingdom unless you are born of the water and the Spirit. But he also says something further down to say, being born again or being born of the Spirit, it's like the wind. You never know where it comes from, and you never know where it's going. You just feel it where you are. That is very, very crucial. That is something that got me thinking, to say, wait a minute. Biologically, when a child is conceived, nobody actually knows when that happens, because nobody participates in that, let alone the child. The child is even worse. The child doesn't even know that they're being conceived. So the conception of this child happens, and maybe 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, the mother starts to see the difference in the body, or they start feeling something. They start to feel that there's something different about me, and they start to look different. That is child conception and the child growing within the womb. This is exactly what happens when one becomes born of the Spirit, when one becomes born again of the Spirit in the kingdom of God. You don't choose to do it, because Christ said, on this rock that I'm the Christ, I'll build my own church. We will talk about this some other time. I mean, the issue of the church, and we will talk about it because it also has to do with the kingdom. We will talk about it probably in the coming sessions. But I wanna marry these two ideas. One, Christ says, I will build my church. So what Christ says is that no one else will build his church. Secondly, says, no one comes to me unless my Father draws him near. So those are the two concepts I want us to marry. And you realize that in all those activities, there's no way where a person actually participates actively. So it is all God's doing. It's all God's actions. God chooses his people and he deposits his spirit back into them so that they can be born again. And the first thing they notice, because you only notice it after a while, similar to what happens in the natural birth of a child. The first thing a person who is born of the Spirit notices is that they hate sin. That's the first thing. Of course, it does not mean they do not sin. It means that they can't resist talking against sin. It means that they can't tolerate doing wrong things. It means that when they do something wrong, they feel it. And that is the difference in terms of a person who's born of the Spirit and anybody else, because we live in a world where we encounter sins every day. We are in a continuous battle. We are in a continuous battle with the flesh. We are in a continuous battle whereby we will encounter sin one way or another. And no one on earth would say they've never had a battle. They've never had to battle with a sin, any form of a sin, of course. So, as a result, when you are born into the kingdom of God, you start realizing that I no longer tolerate sin. There are things that you don't want to do. There are ways that you don't use anymore, simply because there's a new person being born into you. And I think we will go deeper into that in the coming sessions. I just wanted to actually just speak about that for a while, so that we can be able to see that the kingdom of God has not changed as compared to the kingdoms of this world. So as we take comparison between what citizenship is about in republics versus in the kingdom, we might have touched on this in the past. But remember that in all republics, citizenship is based on laws. And this is what is the laws that are made by elected institutions, meaning that we do have courts. We have a constitutional court in the republic, and the constitutional court is the supreme court of law in the country. As a result, every citizen is subject to the laws. So in a kingdom, historically, citizenship was tied to allegiance to the king or allegiance to the monarch, whether it's a king or it's a queen. So that historically what kingdoms citizenship is about. But with today's constitutional kingdoms, most of these kingdoms, citizenship is governed by legislation as it is in republics. But I want to add the third one, the kingdom of God. I said earlier that it has not changed, still the same. So it is still tied to the allegiance to the king. So citizens of the kingdom of God are expected to have allegiance to the king. So if you look at these systems of governance, both of them, whether it's a kingdom or whether it's a republic, both systems of governance require legal residence. One, for you to be in that realm, in that jurisdiction, you need to be a person regarded as a legal resident of that area. The governance also require good conduct, and also what is referred to as an oath for neutralization. This is an oath that is taken when in republics, when a person is taken through the naturalization process, they actually are given an oath that they're supposed to actually abide by. And in some cases, there are countries that don't allow dual citizenship. So they would say that you need to renounce your previous citizenship or your previous country so that you now pledge allegiance to our country or pledge allegiance to our flag. So that is what happens in both of the governance systems. So this happens in the republics and the kingdom. it also happens in the kingdom of God, because for you to be a citizen in the kingdom of God, you must be legal. You must be a legal resident, and you must abide by the code of conduct of that kingdom, and you must have allegiance to the throne. In terms of what we saw in the republics and what we saw in the kingdoms, the common factor there is citizenship is generally governed by written laws. Today, kingdoms are the same as republics because of the constitutions that they develop. However, the kingdom of God operates separately and differently from that, as we've discussed earlier. So these republics and constitutional kingdoms, they both protect their citizens through legal frameworks. We do know that every country, every realm has laws that works with it. And these laws are the key to good citizenship. Every country has what is referred to as the code of conduct, because everyone in the country has to behave in line with what is socially acceptable. So citizens in every realm have this code of conduct. In every country, in every you refer to as jurisdiction, they are supposed to live by a certain code of conduct. I've seen that all these realms, all this space, all these jurisdictions, they derive their code from the laws that Moses gave to the nation of Israel when he was leading them. This is as per what is recorded in the Bible, and that's what the history says. So all forms of governance have these common laws as a basis for citizenship. You think about them. I mean, the basic laws that Moses actually shared with the nation of Israel was that they need to know who their God is. So that is one part, that is the divinity law. And then they had family law. You need to respect your mother and your father. They had a communal law. Do not covet your neighbor's things, whether it's your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's goods or anything. And they also had what is referred to as health laws, so to speak, talking about what they don't have to eat or what they should eat. So those are the laws that the basis of this law, of these laws that Moses had at that time. These are the basic laws that are in every country. Every country don't want their citizens to steal from one another. They don't want their citizens to kill one another. They don't want their citizens to okay, when you covet, obviously it will lead to envy, it will lead to stealing or take him by force. Kidnapping is not allowed. These are all the laws that Moses spoke about. These are the laws that Moses gave to the nation. Of course, there are other laws that republics today don't focus on or are not relevant to them in their view. For example, the divinity laws, because they can decide who is God and who is God to them and all that. They can decide whether they want to eat what they want to eat, which is perfectly fine, because anything that you eat feeds your body or kills you anyway. So you choose what you want to eat. No one can actually stop you from eating anything you want to eat, from consuming anything you want to consume. So most of the laws in the countries or in the republics actually have actually forsaken that part of the law. The rest, is just done so that people can have, they call it a choice. They call it a right of choice. A person can choose to do anything they want in those lines. There are a few strict laws that they know that are common for everyone. If you do any of those, then they take you away. And there are these laws that are loose, that people have a choice either to take them up or not to take them up. So that is what is happening in the republics. So the biggest difference is that in today's kingdoms, or the modern constitutional kingdom, and in the republics, the citizens need external law enforcement. that is something that is very much unfortunate, because when you need an external law enforcement, it means that you are not disciplined. It means that you are probably ill-disciplined. That is why the kingdom of God does not have external law enforcement. The law enforcement is actually internal, and it is at the subconscious level. That is something that did not make sense to the people that Moses was talking to at that time anyway. And those who followed afterwards, the generations that came after, the Israelites did not understand when God said, I will be your God and you will be my people. They did not understand that it is possible for a nation to be there, and within the nation there would be no crime committed. Within the nation there would be no bad things happening, simply because they have God as their king and they follow the laws that the king has given to them, because the word of the king is the law. I've said this before. So they actually did not see that. They wanted kings like other nations. And because they wanted kings like other nations, they ended up like other nations. They ended up doing things that other nations were doing. And they ended up straying away from the laws of God, and they needed external enforcement. So when they got external enforcement, they realized that they have actually been away from the laws of God. They've been disobedient. And every time they became disobedient, they were taken to exile, or some other nation will come and take them over, will come and make them slaves. So that is what was happening when the Israelites decided to move away from the laws of God. As a result, it becomes important to actually move back to the law enforcement that is done internally. If we find ourselves in a space where we can't commit crimes that are actually making the law enforcement or the external law enforcement necessary, we will find ourselves living in a place or in a country that is actually peaceful. But one thing, you can only do that, or you can only experience this internal law enforcement only if you listen to the lawgiver within you, or the lawgiver in your subconscious. But the lawgiver cannot just give you laws unless you agree to those laws, because two cannot work together unless they agree. So it becomes important that, looking at all these forms of citizenships that we have, and all these challenges that we have with them, it's important that we find a space within ourselves where we can be able to check ourselves as to whether we are able to follow the laws that were given to men to live by through God's mouth, the laws that we need to live by without having law enforcement externally. It is something that we need to think about, because it's not easy. For example, in a country like ours, in South Africa, there's a law that says do not murder. Ne? But when you murder, there are steps that come before murder, because murder most of the time is it's predetermined. People think about it before they do it. That I'm saying most of the time, because sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But in the kingdom of God, a law says, do not get angry, because anger brews into what will later become murder. So that is how we need to be looking at this. Find ourselves looking at the laws that Christ gave to us. I mean, Christ was simply refining what Moses said. Christ was refining what Moses said. Like the Israelites were saying, or the Jews were saying, Moses said, we must not kill. Then Jesus says, no, you must not be angry. The Israelite or the Jews said, Moses said, we must not we must not commit adultery. But what Christ says is, when you look at a woman or when you look at a man in a way that you wish you were with them, you've already committed adultery. So if you look at the levels that the kingdom of God takes these issues, it's way higher than any other level, because it is at the mind level, it's at the thought level instead of the actual physical level. So it becomes critically important for us to actually choose the kingdom that we want to live in. And when we choose the kingdom that we want to live in, we need to know that in the kingdom of God, which is the ancient kingdom, and it still operates in the ancient way, the king decides who the citizens are, and the king chooses the citizens. So let's find ourselves, understand the laws of this kingdom, and give space to God for him to choose us and allows us into his kingdom. We will be seeing you in the coming session, and we are done with the citizenship in a kingdom versus the citizenship in the republic, and we will be seeing you in the coming week. Whether we're starting a new series or not, we will let you know when it happens. However, as I've promised before, we need to look into the concept of the church. Yes, so that is still part of the kingdom series. Thank you very much for joining us. We shall be seeing you next time. Shalom.